Most of my videos when tomato paste would ordinarily be called for, I show how to use pureed tomatoes, passata, as part of the recipe at the time as a substitute. The reality is that this technique is not always practical, and it's not always the best method. Sometimes you really need tomato paste, but the stuff that's sold in little cans is quite terrible. It's made from inferior tomatoes and usually contains artificial flavors, preservatives, colorings, as well as cornstarch for thickening. True Italian tomato paste is available in small toothpaste-like tubes at a high price, but even then it's not as good as what you can make yourself. Here's how.
Yeah, the ingredients for this are very simple. I'm using Italian passata. This is hermetically sealed, nothing else added to it. It's just pureed, strained tomatoes from Italy. Please don't confuse this with tomato sauce that's already prepared. This weighs about 500 grams. I've got a tomato that weighs about 250 grams, and we're going to use just a little touch of olive oil later, just a little bit. The reason that you use both fresh tomato and the tomato passata is because this will contain certain phytochemicals that has already had eliminated during the straining and the processing of it. So we're going to use both of them. There's no way that you can get proper flavor using only passata or only fresh tomatoes. You need both to get the best flavor. Finally, I'm not going to peel this tomato either. This is something that most people do when they're making this sort of thing. They boil it in water, pull the skin off. The skin is actually part of the flavor you want. However, what you don't want is this little core in the middle here where the stem is. So then cut the tomato into large chunks. Do not cut it into fine dice or anything else. You want these large pieces like this for it to work. Now I have a stainless steel pan. This is not Teflon. It's a stainless steel pan that I'm heating on a medium-high heat. It's about 7 out of 10. And I've chosen a pan. The circumference at the bottom is roughly the same space as the tomatoes themselves, you see. And I'm going to flip these around so that the skin side is down on all of these and the pan is getting hot. After about 5 or 6 minutes, you start to get a distinctive aroma from this. You'll just have to do it in order to recognize what that aroma is. You can flip over the tomatoes. You can see that there's spots that are actually starting to burn now. Now you can start stirring it. What you want to see. You want to see this fond developed on the bottom from the tomatoes. Now we're going to add the salt to this, just the salt, not the sugar yet. Just the salt. This is going to help pull out a little bit more of the moisture, deglaze this fond, and help the tomatoes break down some more. Okay, now I'm going to stop stirring it again for another couple minutes. Let it go. In about another minute. We don't want to actually burn it, of course, but you want to really get it close. You want to really caramelize this because that's where all the depth of your flavor is going to come from. Okay. Now I'm going to let it go for another minute without stirring it. Okay. It's been just over a minute again. A little bit more of a stir. I'm going to repeat this process a few times. It goes up for about a minute without being stirred. Give it a little stir around. Make sure you spread everything out like that. And give it another minute without stirring it. Okay, it's now been roughly just over 10 minutes since I started, since I added the tomatoes to the pan. 10 or 11 minutes, something like that. Now I'm going to add a little olive oil, about 2 teaspoons of olive oil. This will help keep it from burning it all in the bottom, and it'll help break down the rest of these tomato pieces here that don't want to break down. So, same process though. Stir it around, give it a minute, come back in a minute. Okay, now this time I'm going to add the sugar to it. This will help the sugar start caramelizing a little bit. It'll also further help those tomatoes to break down. And they're getting a lot softer. The hard parts are not as hard as they were. It's breaking down pretty good right now. I'm going to give it another minute without stirring. Okay, now if you get your head down in there now and smell it, you'll smell a tomato aroma that is quite different from any aroma you're going to get with just passata. It has more of the aroma of tomato leaves, really, and other chemicals that are not present if you just cook passata by themselves. And this is the complexity that you want. Now I'm putting in about a third of that passata, somewhere around 150, 160 grams, and now I'm going to reduce the heat down. It's been on 7 out of 10 the whole time. Now it's on 5. Scrape up any fond on the bottom as best you can, and we're going to stir this occasionally, every 3 or 4 minutes, and it may splatter, in which case splatter guard, put a splatter guard over it. But this is going to cook for quite a while until it darkens and it thickens. And make sure that you don't have material that's up on the sides of the pan too, because that's not getting cooked the same. So scrape everything down, let it cook. We'll check back on this in just a little bit. It's about 6 minutes later. As you can see, it's a little bit starting to stick to the bottom of the pan. That's good. That's caramelization taking place there, but you don't want to overextend that to where it's burning on the bottom of the pan, of course. So every few minutes you're going to give it a little stir, loosen it up from the bottom, let it go again. This is quite a bit like making an Indian masala at this point. Put it back, let it go some more. Now, here's what it looks like after going for about 15 minutes. You can see there's a lot of darkness on the bottom now. About every 5 minutes, you want to check on it. You want some browning on the bottom, a little bit of fond development, but not too much. You don't want to burn this. After about the third time, you start getting something that looks like this, very thick, and you got pieces that are sticking to the bottom you can't get rid of. Now we're going to add the rest of the passata. And initially, the first step here is we're going to keep it at heat setting 5, which is medium. Now we'll keep it at heat setting 5, bring it up to a simmer. I'm going to put the splatter guard back on it because it's going to probably start splattering. Okay, it's been 5 minutes now. We've got good solid boil going here. Now I'm going to reduce the heat way down to 2 out of 1 to 10. Now here's where the process really takes some time. You have to be very, very patient. You're going to stir it every 10 or 15 minutes. There's not going to be a lot of heat on it, so there's not going to be a lot of fond formation on the bottom. But it will take time to reduce properly. It will get sweeter during this time, and that's what you want. Here's what it looks like after about 10 minutes. Make sure you scrape down the sides. Maintain the reduction, same low temperature, number 2. And finally, now we're at almost an hour. And you can see the volume of this has shrank quite a bit. The heat has been maintained on 2 the whole time. If you taste this now, it's very rich and concentrated and quite sweet, mostly natural. Yeah, there's a teaspoon of sugar in there, but that didn't add much sweetness. Mostly it's just a slow caramelization of the tomatoes. Now check this and weigh it and make sure that you've got about the right volume. If you're off by too much, you can return it to the pan and cook it down a little bit more. And I'm weighing it. I got 225 grams. It's about right. It should be somewhere between 200 and 250. It's in the middle. It's just right.
The second volume of my cookbook is now available through Amazon and other booksellers. It covers the YouTube recipes from the last 8 months with more in-depth information. I received requests for the procedures on all recipes, and I've listened to you. Every recipe has step-by-step directions, and of course there are recipes that aren't on YouTube. But this is not just a recipe book. Far from it, as you can see from some of the topics scrolling by here. I'm certain that anyone who watches my channel and any serious cook will find this book a treasury of useful and new information you won't find anywhere else. If you want to know more about my adventures as a chef around the world and have some great laughs along the way, be sure to check out the video tour of my book, 40 Years in One Night. It's up on YouTube right now. Click the link. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.